Officer Clara Vaughn stood in the damp early morning mist, her boots sinking slightly into the soft earth beneath her. The cold air bit at her skin, but it was the knot in her stomach that made her uneasy. The woods behind Marrow Creek had always been peaceful to most people, but for Clara, they were a place where fear and anxiety lingered. Something about the quiet made it feel like the forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Today was no different. Clara adjusted her utility belt, running her fingers over the tools she'd need, but her thoughts were already somewhere else. She glanced at her partner, Oaks, her Belgian Malinois. His dark amber eyes were fixed on the trees, his body still yet alert. Oaks had been with her for 3 years now, and in that time, they'd become a team. No one knew her better than Oaks did. His ability to sense things she couldn't was more than just training. It was a bond, a silent understanding between them. "Ready, boy?" Clara whispered. Oaks didn't respond with a bark, but his ears twitched, and his gaze didn't waver. He was always calm, but today was different. There was an intensity in his posture, something she hadn't seen before. His gaze never left the trees ahead, as if waiting for something or someone. Clara frowned, sensing it too. The air felt thick with tension. This wasn't just any missing persons case. The call had come in earlier that morning. Curtis Broom, a quiet handyman in his late 40s, had gone missing. His sister had reported it, and there was something in her voice that had caused the urgency. Curtis had never missed their Sunday breakfast. Tradition. Not once. And today, he was gone. His truck was still parked near the trailhead. His keys were in the ignition. His phone was found in the glove compartment. Dead. Clara looked at Oaks again. "Let's find him, Oaks." The dog turned slightly, meeting her gaze for a brief second before he began to move. He wasn't rushing, but his steps were deliberate, as though the path ahead was something he already knew. Clara followed closely, trusting him completely. She had learned long ago that Oaks could sense things no one else could, something in the air, in the ground, in the smallest of sounds. He had an instinct that was almost supernatural. As they moved deeper into the woods, Clara felt the weight of the silence pressing down on her. The leaves crunched beneath her boots, but all else was still. Oaks slowed down, his body tense like he was waiting for something, waiting for the scent to lead him somewhere new. "Something's not right," Clara muttered, mostly to herself, though Oaks seemed to hear her. He stopped, his eyes locked on a distant point in the trees. Clara followed his gaze. For a moment, she didn't see anything, just the dense undergrowth and the thick woods stretching out ahead. But Oaks was still. He wasn't moving. Her heart skipped a beat. Oaks growled softly, a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate in the air. It was the kind of growl he only made when he sensed something dangerous. Clara took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Easy, Oaks. Let's see what you've got." She knew Oaks better than anyone. He didn't make a sound unless he was sure, and right now he was more than sure. He was on to something that she couldn't yet see. As they moved forward, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this search wouldn't be like the others. Something in the woods was waiting, and Oaks, her loyal partner, was about to lead her straight to it. And deep down, Clara felt it. Today was going to change everything. Clara stood still for a moment, holding Curtis's flannel shirt in her hands. The fabric still carried the faint scent of the missing man, damp, earthy, and slightly sweet. She sniffed, hoping to catch something more, but the smell didn't bring clarity, only more questions. She glanced at Oaks, who was already on edge, his amber eyes scanning the dense woods around them. "Got something, boy?" Clara whispered, keeping her voice low, not wanting to disturb whatever Oaks was sensing. His body stiffened, a subtle sign he'd found something. His nose twitched as he inhaled deeply, picking up a scent no one else could. Without warning, Oaks's head snapped to the side. His muscles tensed, and his paws shifted in place. Clara felt a wave of unease wash over her. Oaks was more than just a search dog. He was her partner, the one who always knew when something wasn't right. but today the air felt heavier than usual. "Oaks, what are you sensing?" she whispered, but the dog remained silent, his focus unwavering. He didn't bark or whine like he usually did when he found something important. He just moved, fast and purposeful. His sharp movements tugged Clara forward. "Hey!" Clara called to the team behind her, who were still distracted by the trail markers. "Something's off. Oaks is on to something." But the others were already dismissing her. They were focused on the search pattern, spreading out in the grid formation, convinced they were on the right track. But Oaks wasn't listening. His instincts told him something different, something the team couldn't see. Before Clara could even take another step, Oaks abruptly veered off the path, cutting sharply through the thick underbrush. She barely had time to react. "Oaks!" she shouted, but the dog was already pulling her deeper into the forest, as if he had a target in mind. She struggled to keep up, branches scratching her arms as Oaks moved faster, his body zigzagging through the woods with a sense of urgency. Clara's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to catch her breath. "Where are you going, boy?" she gasped, but Oaks didn't slow down. His nose was working overtime, pulling him forward as though he could smell something none of them could. He weaved between the trees, his pace unrelenting as if he was following a trail no one else knew existed. Clara felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Suddenly Oaks stopped, his body rigid again. His nose twitched and his ears swiveled in the direction of something Clara couldn't yet see. She hesitated, standing beside him, trying to steady her breathing. "What is it, Oaks?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Then, in one smooth motion, Oaks lowered his body, his tail flicking behind him in preparation for something. Clara's pulse quickened. This wasn't just a scent trail. Oaks was tracking something much darker. "Oaks, are you sure?" she muttered, the weight of the unknown pressing in on her. The dog didn't respond, but his body language spoke volumes. He had found something that would change everything. And Clara knew without a doubt that they weren't just looking for Curtis anymore. Clara and Oaks pressed deeper into the forest, the silence growing thicker with each step. The usual sounds of the woods, the rustling leaves, the chirping birds seemed to vanish. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Oaks, usually so composed, had slowed down. His eyes scanned the trees ahead, his body stiff with tension. Clara glanced at him, her heart racing. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. Oaks didn't respond. Instead, he stopped altogether, his ears twitching, his body poised. Clara had been through countless searches with him, but she'd never seen him like this. Oaks, her steady partner, was on edge. Then, without warning, he moved again, slowly at first, but with purpose. Clara followed him, her boots crunching on the dry leaves beneath her. She trusted him more than anyone else. But this felt different. As they reached a clearing, Oaks's head snapped to one side. His growl, low and deep, rumbled through the still air. Clara froze, her breath caught in her chest. Oaks had only growled like that twice before, once when they'd found a bear in their path and once when he'd found human remains. "Oaks, what is it?" she asked softly. But the dog didn't answer. He wasn't barking or whining, just staring. Ahead, his gaze fixed on a large, hollowed-out tree in front of them. Clara's pulse quickened as she followed Oaks toward the tree. She reached for her flashlight, flicking it on, the beam cutting through the darkness. She moved cautiously, her footsteps muffled by the thick underbrush, but her eyes never left Oaks. He was fixated, his body rigid, tail stiff. The tension in the air was unbearable. As they reached the tree, Clara's flashlight landed on the hollow center, and what she saw made her stomach churn. Inside the tree, wrapped in something old and tattered, was a human arm. Severed cleanly at the elbow, the skin was pale, almost waxy. It looked too perfect, too deliberate. Around the wrist was a strip of linen, the crude symbol on it unmistakable, something that seemed to belong to an old, forgotten ritual. Clara recoiled, her breath catching in her throat. "Oh my God," she whispered. Her eyes darted to Oak's, but the dog didn't flinch. He was still, his eyes never leaving the arm inside the tree. His focus was unwavering, like he knew something more was hidden here, something worse. "Oaks, we need to call this in," Clara said, but Oaks didn't move. His growl deepened. It wasn't just a clue. It was a warning. Oaks knew this was only the beginning of something far more sinister. Clara's heart pounded in her chest. The woods around them felt colder now, darker, as if they were being watched. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, but the knot in her stomach only tightened. Something in the woods wanted to be found, and Oaks, her brave partner, was leading her straight to it. Clara stood frozen, her eyes still fixed on the severed arm inside the hollow tree. The weight of what they had just discovered was almost too much to bear. Her hands shook as she pointed the flashlight toward the gruesome sight, but Oaks wouldn't look away. His focus remained unbroken, locked on the tree, as if waiting for something more to reveal itself. "Oaks," Clara whispered, her voice trembling. "Where are you leading us?" The dog didn't respond, only stared deeper into the tree, his body taut with an energy Clara couldn't understand. She could feel her heart racing, the hair on the back of her neck standing up. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just a random act of violence. This was something planned, something deliberate. Without warning, Oaks took a few steps back, still keeping his eyes trained on the tree. Clara was about to call him back when, with no hesitation, he darted forward, pulling her once again through the thick underbrush. She stumbled after him, trying to keep up as the dog moved quickly, his legs eating up the ground. "Oaks, slow down," Clara called, but Oaks didn't listen. His focus was sharp, pulling her deeper into the forest with each tug. The ground beneath them began to change. The soft earth grew firmer, and the air around them seemed to thicken, heavy with the strange sense that something was closing in on them. Oaks moved through it effortlessly while Clara had to fight to keep up, branches and underbrush scraping at her arms. They passed through a dense patch of trees, and Clara's breath caught as she looked ahead. There, standing at the edge of a clearing, was another large tree. This one, too, was hollowed out, but it wasn't the same as the last one. Something about it felt different, darker, more unsettling. Oak stopped in front of it, his stance rigid. Clara hesitated. "Oaks," she whispered, but the dog didn't turn. He stayed there, his body taut, eyes fixed on the opening of the tree. There was no sign of any body parts this time, but the silence in the air told Clara this place held more than just a simple tree. A cold chill ran down her spine as she realized what Oaks was leading her to. They weren't just searching for Curtis anymore. Oaks wasn't just tracking a missing person. No, this was something much worse. The dog's instincts had led them straight into the heart of something far more sinister, something Clara couldn't yet understand. The feeling of dread crept up her chest. This wasn't just a search anymore, it was a hunt, and Oaks, her brave partner, had known it from the beginning. He had led them here to this place where whatever had happened to Curtis Broom was only a small part of a much larger, darker story. "Oaks," Clara muttered, her voice cracking. "What have we walked into?" But Oaks didn't answer. He was already moving again, his eyes locked onto the next step of the journey, pulling Clara deeper into the woods toward the unknown. Oaks' movements grew more urgent as they pressed on. His pace quickened, and Clara had to fight to keep up. She knew something was coming, something Oaks had already sensed. The air felt colder now, heavier, like the forest itself was closing in around them. Every step Oaks took seemed calculated, deliberate. His focus was intense, as if he was following a trail only he could see. Clara's heart hammered in her chest. "What is it, Oaks?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Oaks didn't look back, didn't respond. He was on a mission. The woods around them seemed to shrink, the trees growing closer, casting long shadows over the path they were taking. It felt like they were being led deeper into something that had been waiting for them. Finally, Oaks stopped. His body stiffened, his nose twitching as he inhaled deeply. Clara looked ahead and saw what Oaks had found, Another ancient tree stood before them, its gnarled branches twisted and reaching out like claws. At the base of the tree, something wrapped in canvas lay in the shadows. Oaks didn't move, just sat there, his eyes locked on the object. He was waiting. Clara's stomach turned as she stepped closer. She shone her flashlight on the bundle, and what she saw made her blood run cold. 2 feet, bound together with rough cord, were wrapped tightly in the same faded canvas material as the arm from before. The feet were perfectly preserved, almost too clean, too precise. The toes were curled unnaturally and the skin was pale, almost waxy. A sickening realization gripped Clara's chest. "This isn't a random act of violence," she whispered. "This is something planned, something deliberate." She turned to Oaks, but he didn't flinch. He didn't look away from the feet at the base of the tree. His eyes remained steady, unwavering. "They want us to find these," Clara murmured, the dread in her voice thickening. Oaks was not just tracking a killer. No, this was something far darker, something orchestrated step by step. Whoever was behind this had a plan that Oaks had been guiding them through from the very beginning. Clara's heart sank as she knelt beside him. She could feel the weight of what they were facing now. The pieces of a twisted puzzle were falling into place, and Oaks had led them straight to it. There was no turning back. Whoever was behind this was watching, waiting, and they wanted to be found. Clara took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "What's next, Oaks?" she whispered, but the dog didn't answer. He only stared ahead, his focus unwavering, ready for whatever came next. Oaks didn't slow down. If anything, his pace had picked up. With each step, the forest seemed to grow darker, more oppressive. Clara could feel it too, the weight of what was unfolding. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and she wasn't sure she wanted to see the picture they made. Oaks, however, was unshaken. He moved through the woods like he was following an invisible path only he could see. "Where are you? Leading us, Oaks?" Clara whispered, though she knew Oaks wasn't listening. His focus was absolute, his movements precise. The air around them seemed to thicken, every breath feeling heavier than the last. The forest seemed to grow more silent as they pushed deeper into the woods. Clara couldn't help but glance over at Oaks, his amber eyes scanning every corner. The tension was rising. Oaks stopped once more, his body tense, his nose twitching as he sniffed the air. Clara froze beside him, her heart racing. She followed, his gaze toward another ancient tree, gnarled and twisted, its hollow opening dark and foreboding. Clara stepped closer, her flashlight cutting through the shadows. She didn't know what she was expecting, but it wasn't this. Inside the hollow of the tree, wrapped tightly in the same canvas material, was a human torso. The body was dismembered with terrifying precision, the skin pale and waxy, and the pattern of the mutilation was surgical, deliberate. Clara's stomach churned. The sight made her dizzy, and she had to take a step back. "Oh God," she whispered. She could feel her hands trembling as she reached for her radio. "Weston, you need to see this." Weston's voice crackled over the radio. "What did you find?" "A torso," Clara replied, barely able to keep her voice steady. It's been cut clean. This isn't just a random killing. Someone's been preparing for this." Oak sat still, his eyes never leaving the body, his focus unshaken. He didn't bark or growl. He didn't move. He was just waiting. Clara turned to him. "We're not just dealing with a killer," she said, her voice steadying. "We're dealing with someone who's been preparing for this. They're making sure we find each piece one by one." Just then, Oaks growled low, deep in his throat. It wasn't a sound of anger or fear. It was a sound of warning. Oaks knew they weren't done yet. Clara felt her pulse quicken. She turned back to the tree, her heart heavy with dread. "This isn't over," she whispered. "There's more out here." Oaks stood up, looking toward the deeper woods, signaling that they weren't finished. Clara knew he was right. The search was just beginning, and whatever they were hunting, Oaks would lead them straight to it. Clara had barely recovered from the horrors of the last discovery when Oaks, as always, continued forward. His body language had shifted, more tense than ever, as if he knew they weren't done. Clara felt the weight of his silence, the urgency in his every movement. She followed, every step heavy, every instinct screaming that something far worse awaited them. After what felt like an eternity, Oakes stopped again, his ears pointed forward, eyes fixed on something in the distance. Clara didn't hesitate this time. She trusted him completely, even as dread gnawed at her stomach. She moved quickly to catch up with him. This time it was the fifth tree. Oakes stood still, his gaze unwavering as he stared at the trunk. Clara's heart raced as she approached. Something was different about this one. She could feel it before. Her eyes landed on the object. There, tucked into the bark, was a photograph. Clara's breath caught in her throat. The woman in the picture was alive, laughing, smiling. She looked so ordinary, so unaware of the terror her face would come to represent. The photo was faded, worn, but still clear enough for Clara to see the joy in her expression. But it wasn't the photo that stopped Clara's heart. It was what she saw beneath it. A new symbol had been carved into the tree, a triangle with a circle and a jagged slash through the middle. It was similar to the others, but different. The addition of this new symbol made the air feel colder. Clara reached out, her fingers trembling as she turned the photograph over. Her heart skipped a beat. Written on the back in careful handwriting were two words: "Next move." This isn't just about victims already dead. Clara muttered, more to herself than anyone else. It's a schedule. Someone is planning their next move. Oakes whined softly, his eyes darting into the distance. Clara glanced up and froze. In the shadows, movement, faint but unmistakable. Something, or someone, was out there. Oakes's growl deepened, low and threatening. The dog's unease was contagious. Clara's instincts screamed that they were being watched. The realization hit her hard, like a punch to the gut. This wasn't a random killing spree. No, this was something far more calculated. It was a hunt with an ominous purpose, and Oakes had led her straight into it. "What have we walked into, Oakes?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. But Oakes didn't answer. He wasn't concerned with answers. He was concerned with what was coming next, and Clara, for the first time, felt a deep sense of dread. They were no longer just searching. They were being hunted too. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Oakes grew more agitated. His tail twitched, his ears flicked, and his body remained tense. Clara could feel the shift in the air. The forest had become darker, colder, and every step Oakes took seemed more urgent. The shadows seemed to close in around them, and the deeper they went, the more unsettled Clara became. Something was wrong. "Oakes, what is it, boy?" Clara whispered. But Oakes didn't answer. His eyes were focused ahead, his movements swift and determined, as though he was being pulled by an invisible force. Clara looked around, trying to make sense of it all. They had been tracking the suspect for hours, but now Oakes wasn't just following a scent trail. He was being led. It felt like the forest itself was guiding him deeper, drawing him into the darkness. She glanced back at the team, but they were still some distance behind. Suddenly, the sound of movement in the trees made Clara freeze. It wasn't the normal sounds of the forest. No, this was something else. Someone else. Oakes' head whipped around and a low growl rumbled in his chest. Clara's pulse quickened. "Oakes?" she murmured. But the dog was already moving, darting forward through the underbrush with incredible speed. "Oakes, wait!" But he didn't slow down. The growl became a sharp bark, a single urgent sound that echoed through the woods. Clara felt a chill run down her spine as Oakes bolted ahead. Her heart raced as she ran after him, desperate to catch up. They were close, very close. Then, through the trees, Clara saw a figure, a man, moving quickly, darting between the trunks. She could barely make out his face, but Oakes had already locked onto him. The dog moved faster, circling, positioning himself in front of the man. "Oakes, stop!" Clara shouted, but Oakes didn't listen. With a final forceful bark, Oaks lunged forward, cornering the man against a large tree. Clara arrived just in time to see Oaks standing tall, his body rigid, ready to strike if needed. The man, panting heavily, had nowhere to go. Clara's chest heaved with relief. "You're caught," she said, trying to steady her breath. But the moment she stepped forward, something shifted. The man didn't seem afraid. He was calm, almost relieved. Clara's instincts screamed that this wasn't over. And then, as the reality hit, Clara realized that the true nightmare was just beginning. Joseph Meir stood still, his eyes locked on Clara as the team moved in to apprehend him. His posture was unnervingly calm, as though he'd been expecting this moment. Clara could feel, her heart pounding in her chest as she approached, her fingers gripping her flashlight tightly. This was it. The man responsible for everything. The one behind the mutilations, the rituals, and the deaths. "He knew we were coming," Clara said, her voice tight with disbelief. She felt a chill run through her, realizing how much he had orchestrated this entire nightmare. Meir didn't fight. He didn't try to run. He didn't even show fear. Instead, he stood there, eerily composed, as if all of this had been part of his plan from the beginning. Clara's mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. What could drive someone to commit such horrific acts? Meir had been living off the grid for years, moving from state to state, disappearing without a trace. He wasn't just a killer. He was a part of something much larger. Something that had been waiting for the right time, the right moment to strike. Clara looked at him closely, studying his face for any hint of emotion, but found none. His expression was unreadable, cold. He was a man who had no remorse, no guilt. "Why?" Clara asked, her voice shaking despite her attempt to stay calm. "What made you do this?" Meir didn't answer. He simply stared back at her with those empty eyes. Clara shuddered. She wanted to understand. She needed to know what had pushed him to this point. But in that moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was that they had stopped him. Clara glanced at Oaks, who stood beside her, still watching Meir intently. The dog's posture was calm but alert, as always. Oaks had led them here. He had tracked down every clue, found every hidden piece, and guided them to the truth. Without him, none of this would have been possible. Clara felt a surge of gratitude toward her partner. Oaks had saved them all. He had saved so many lives, and now he had brought the monster to justice. "Oaks," Clara whispered, her voice soft with emotion. "You did it, boy. We did it." Oaks looked up at her, his amber eyes meeting hers. In that moment, Clara knew. This was just the beginning. The nightmare was over, but Oaks would always be by her side, guiding her through the darkness, no matter what came next. As the investigation into Joseph Meir's crimes continued, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The truth was darker than Clara could have imagined. Meir's network wasn't just a string of isolated killings. Each victim had been carefully selected, their deaths part of a twisted ritual. The victims were placed in the woods, hidden away, waiting to be found. Every death was deliberate, every piece of the ritual planned long before the bodies were discovered. Clara sat in the cramped room, staring at the case files in front of her. She felt the weight of what she had learned. This wasn't just about finding a killer. It was about stopping a cycle of death that had been going on for years. And without Oaks, none of this would have come to light. The dog's ability to detect, sense had been the key. Oaks had led them to each discovery, his sharp nose picking up on trails that no one else could smell. His instincts, honed by years of training, had guided them through the darkest parts of the forest, bringing them to the truth step by step. "Oaks," Clara whispered, her voice soft as she scratched behind his ears. The dog sat beside her, his head resting on her knee as always. His amber eyes looked up at her with a calmness that grounded her. "You saved them, boy. You brought justice to those who couldn't speak." Oaks didn't bark or wag his tail, but he leaned into her touch, sensing the gratitude in her voice. In a world that often seemed full of darkness, Oaks had been the light. He was more than just a partner. He was her hero, the one who had led them through the chaos and the horror, showing them the way when there seemed to be none. As Clara looked down at Oaks, she felt a deep connection to him, a bond that had grown, stronger with each passing day. He wasn't just a dog to her. He was family. He had been there when others couldn't, and together, they had brought justice to the forgotten victims of Morrow Creek. The case was closed now, but Clara knew that she and Oaks would always be there for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Because with Oaks by her side, she was never truly alone.